Today we're going to look at the concepts of human knowledge and skepticism, and we're going to do this by way of one of the great classics of early modern philosophy, and that is René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy, at least the first couple chapters of it. I'll tell you a little bit about the rest of the book too. But before we do that, let me just tell you that this part of the course deals with what philosophers call epistemology. That's the branch of philosophy that deals with knowledge and evidence. And it comes from the Greek word episteme, which just means knowledge. And I think epistemology is one of the most interesting parts of philosophy, and I hope you agree. So one concept that you have to clearly have in mind is the concept of knowledge. The way that philosophers talk about knowledge, it is not true that knowing is just firmly believing. In ordinary life outside of philosophy, people use the term knowledge in a different way. And when they say that a person knows something, it can just mean that they firmly, resolutely believe it with all their being, something like that. So in ordinary language, you might say that there's a certain, you might be talking about your one friend who's a theist and your other friend who's an atheist. And you might say that the theist knows God exists, whereas your atheist friend knows there is no God. Now, there's nothing wrong with talking like this. What this means, though, is just that your one friend who's very religious firmly believes that there is a God, whereas your village atheist friend firmly believes that there isn't a God. But the way philosophers use the term knowledge, it would be contradictory to say these two things. So if you know that P, first of all, this requires that P be true. Some philosophers say that knowledge is a success term. Okay, so you can know that 2 plus 2 is 4, and you can know that there are 50 states in the United States, but you can't know that 2 plus 2 is 3, and you can't know that, Hitler won World War II, because those things aren't true. Okay, so to know something, first of all, it has to be true. Second, it has to be that you believe it. Right? If I don't believe that the Allies won World War II, then I don't know that the Allies won World War II. If it never enters my mind, it's not a piece of knowledge that I have. And again, there's a difference between philosophy and ordinary language here. Belief does not mean believe without evidence. That's not how we use the term in philosophy. That is, belief doesn't mean mere belief. Believing is just being committed to the world being a certain way. If I believe that the Allies won World War II, I am just committed to that being true. I'd be very surprised if I found out it was false. Of course, I couldn't really find out it was false because that is true. If you believe that God exists, you are committed to the world containing God. You believe that there is a perfect source of the world and governor of the world, and you'd be surprised to find out if that wasn't so. If you believe there is no God, you're committed to this being a God-free world. Maybe you're a naturalist. Okay, so to believe is just to be mentally committed to reality being a certain way. If you believe something, that doesn't imply that you have no evidence for your belief. It doesn't. You could have no evidence, or you could have a lot of evidence. Now, is this enough? Should we say that a person knows that P if and only if P is true and S believes P? You might think this is enough, but a long time ago, Plato pointed out that this isn't enough. Because it seems like you can have true belief, and we want to say that you don't know that something is so. So I've got a picture of the moon here. And what if I asked you, is the number of roughly golf ball sized rocks on the moon odd, or is that an even number? Now, I imagine you're a pretty sensible person, but you're not like my friend Jethro here. He says, even. The number of roughly golf ball sized rocks lying on the surface of the moon, he says, surely that's even. I mean, look, the moon is a perfect sphere, and even numbers are more perfect than odd numbers. So I just believe that it's even. Now, you and I probably wouldn't form a belief either way, but suppose my friend Jethro here says and actually believes that the number of golf ball sized rocks on the moon is even. Now, just let's suppose that this is true. Jethro lucked out. He is correct. Still, we don't want to say that he knows that the number of golf ball sized rocks on the surface of the moon is even. We wouldn't say that he knows that because he doesn't have any good evidence for it. I mean, he has this weird theory about how a perfect sphere must be. Of course, it's based on a false view about what the moon is shaped like. Anyway, we would say that definitely he does not know that. Consider another example. Suppose that you're on a jury, and there's a man before you that's been accused of murder, and let's suppose that he is guilty. He actually did the murder. But the thing is, this guy is from an ethnic group that you dislike. You see, you're a bigot. You say, "Oh, those people, you can't trust them. They're always running out and doing things like this." And maybe just because of your bigotry, you form the belief that this guy did it. And in fact, it is true that this guy did do it. They have caught the correct man. But we want to say that you don't know that he's guilty. We're supposing you've ignored the evidence and you're just basing your belief on this prejudice. So again, P is true, you believe it, but we want to say that you don't know it. Again, suppose the prisoner is, or the person accused is innocent, and you believe they're innocent. But the reason you believe they're innocent is because the defense attorney is really hot. Well, we would say that you don't know he's innocent, even if you very firmly believe it. So it looks like there is a third factor that has to be in place for a person to know something. It looks like this person S must have adequate justification or evidence for P. So this does seem to fix the cases, right? Our friend Jethro doesn't know that the number of golf ball sized rocks on the surface of the moon is even because he lacks this third factor. He does not have adequate justification. Really, he has no justification or precious little. What about our juror? Well, our bigoted juror that believes the guy is guilty, and he is guilty, he too lacks adequate justification. And if you change the case where the juror is a virtuous juror, he's doing his job correctly. Whatever his prejudices are, he holds back from deciding, from prejudging the case, and he looks at all the evidence that's presented, and if there's enough evidence, then it may be that he has adequate justification, and he believes the guy is guilty and it's true. So then we would say this juror knows that that defendant is guilty. Same with the innocent person accused. If the juror has paid attention to all the evidence that's been presented, and if enough evidence has been presented, then this juror may have adequate justification for her belief that the accused is innocent. Okay, so that's the concept of knowledge. Here's another interesting concept, the concept of a skeptic. Now, in ordinary life, we say that somebody is skeptical just when they don't believe you about something. Like this young lady here, you say, I got a 1500 on the SAT or 2100 on the SAT, and she goes, "No, you didn't." Well, yeah, that is refusing to believe something. And in philosophy, skepticism means that no one has knowledge in a certain domain, in some realm, because no one has adequate justification or evidence for beliefs about that domain. So the most extreme kind of skepticism is global skepticism. Global skepticism is the view that no one knows anything. Because either there isn't good evidence out there, or there's something that undermines all the evidence that we have, or some ancient skeptics held that there's always evidence for and against any claim. So whenever you have evidence for some beliefs, there's always counterbalancing evidence for the opposite, which sort of cancels out the force of the evidence. So a global skeptic is somebody who says no one knows anything. Now, if they're smart, they won't say nobody, sorry, they won't say that we know no one knows anything. You see why they wouldn't say that? It's ridiculous to say I know that nobody knows anything. You just refuted your own position if you've asserted that it's false. But what they say, if they're careful, is we believe, and we reasonably believe, that nobody knows anything. That's global skepticism. There are some out there. Or maybe you're skeptical about beliefs about the external world, that is, beliefs that don't have to do just with our own states of consciousness. So this kind of skeptic might say a person could know that she's in pain, a person could know that she's feeling doubt, or that she seems to remember summer vacation. Maybe you can have knowledge of how things seem to you and just your immediate states of mind. But an external world skeptic would say you couldn't know that the lights are on in this room. You couldn't know that Miami is south of New York City. You couldn't know the Allies won World War II. You couldn't know anything about the world beyond your own mind. That's still kind of extreme. A little bit less extreme kind is moral skepticism. You think that people don't have knowledge about good and bad, or good and evil, or right and wrong. So maybe you think that there is scientific knowledge, say biology, chemistry, physics, but you don't think anybody knows that it's wrong to kill somebody just for the fun of it, or that adultery is wrong, or making fun of ugly people is wrong. Well, that's a pretty extreme position, but that's moral skepticism. Probably even more common than that is religious skepticism. Well, maybe we can know things about right and wrong, but how could anybody ever know whether or not God exists, or whether or not some report of a miracle is true? So some people are skeptics only about matters of religion. Okay, so where does Descartes fit into all this? Well, we'll get into that in the next segment.